All right, so hopefully y'all can hear me. To get started, I'll go over just some information about the exam overall. So you're going to only have one attempt to take the exam. So when you sit down to take it, be prepared to complete it in that one sitting. The test is timed out at 2 hours, so you're going to have 2 hours to complete the exam. The exam consists of 40 questions that are multiple choice or true false that are worth 5 points each. So, of the total 250 points, 200 of those points are going to be multiple choice true false questions. Now, these questions are going to come in a random selection. So, what that means is I've put far more than 40 true false multiple choice questions in there, and Canvas is going to select a random 40 for you to complete. So, you and your peers may have some of the same questions, some of the different questions, and things like that. In addition to that, there are 5 questions that are the same for everybody that are short answer. They're identified through Canvas as essay questions, but I don't expect a full essay for them. They're worth 10 points each. What I expect is between 1 to 3 sentences for each of them. So it's nothing that you have to write any, large amount of information for or anything like that. Um, the exam is going to be open from March 2nd through the 9th. So you can choose any time throughout that week that you want to sit down and take the exam. I expect that you take the exam without the help of peers or the internet or your textbook or anything like that. And I would expect that if you take the exam early on in that week, that you wouldn't share with your peers what the questions are or things like that, especially because most of the questions you may have different anyway. In addition, what else? The answers to the exam are going to be posted after the exam closes. So when the exam closes on 3/9, all of the correct answers are going to be revealed the next day. So I can't give any extra time to take the exam because everyone will know what the answers are at that point, and that's when you'll be able to determine what you may or may not have gotten correctly or what the correct answers are. So as I posted in the announcement with the doodle poll, the exam covers all of the textbook chapters that we did in the first half of the semester. So it's chapters 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, and 17. So it's 9 different chapters. I didn't include any questions from the supplemental reading. And all of the questions on the exam do come from the study guides that I linked. So there's not going to be any questions that are not included in those 9 documents that I posted there. Most of the questions are pretty straightforward. I do not tend to put questions that have a lot about like numbers and dates, like 10% of people, stuff like that. I try to avoid those questions just because statistics can easily change over time. And so to me, it doesn't make sense to have you memorize that sort of information. But a question may say something to the extent of, it's more likely for blah, 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 just so you know you don't have to deal with numbers. All of the, well, no, 4 of the short answers. So there's 5 short answer questions. 4 of them are basic definitions. So it might be, define culture, define privilege, define marginalization or acculturation or something like that. And again, you just want to answer it in between 1 to 3 sentences. The 5th short answer is a little bit different. Basically, it's identify one of the ways in which counselors do this. So there are going to be multiple different answers that you can select from, and I just want you to choose one and explain it. But again, all of those are worth 10 points. So that's basically all of the information about the exam. So I want to open it up to any specific questions you may have, about the exam, about the information in the textbook, or really anything else that you feel like you want to ask about. Yes, the chapters that the exam is going to be on is 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, and 17. And so when you go back to the announcement where I announced like the doodle poll for you to fill out for this, I did link all of the study guides for those specific chapters. I see someone just popped in. Right now is the chance to kind of ask any questions that you might have about the exam. You can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question out loud, or you can type it into the chat box if you'd like. Let me see if anyone emailed me any questions. Okay, I don't see any emailed questions. So if you have any, just shout them out or type them out. How many questions? Okay, so we did go over that, but it's okay to go over it again. There's going to be 40 questions that are multiple choice or true false. Those 40 questions are going to be worth 5 points each, and they're going to be selected at random. So I included way more than 40 questions, and Canvas is just going to randomly select questions for you up to 40. Then there's going to be 5 short answer questions that are worth 10 points each. And those 5 short answer questions, they're listed as essay questions in Canvas, but really what I'm looking for is just maybe like 1 to 3 sentences for each. You don't have to write out a whole essay. And again, those questions are mostly definitions, like how do you define this word or that word, but one is where you're going to choose a specific way that counselors do, X, Y, and Z, and discuss that one specific thing. Like I think there's like 3 or 4 options, and you just select one of those and write about it. What other questions do we have? So the most effective way to prepare, take a look at the study guides that I posted in the announcement for each chapter. All of the questions on the exam are going to be taken from those study guides. So none of the questions are going to come from elsewhere. You can kind of cut out any questions that have like percentages or numbers or dates. Like I don't usually ask those kind of questions, again, because statistical data and studies are being done all the time, so that stuff changes. So I'm not going to ask you a question like what % of clients blank blank blank, because I mean it could be irrelevant by next month, let alone as you move into the field. So any of the questions in the study guides that have things like that, you can go ahead and cross off and then focus on the other questions in those study guides. Most of the questions I selected really relate to the topics overall. So I don't like to do things that are too specific. It's more like I was talking about the definitions. It's going to be, really important words to know, like the definition of culture, the definition of privilege. Those are topics that I'm going to really focus on in the questions. Perhaps there was some information about how a specific identity, specific classes, specific, races or, genders or whatever, deal with things. Those kind of questions might be in there. I'm trying to think, because I'm on the Zoom, I don't know if I try to go back and look at the quiz, if it'll cut off the Zoom. So I don't want to do that. So I'm not looking directly at the quiz right now, unfortunately. But, just try to focus on the bigger themes of the chapter. So actually, if I take a look at some of the chapter, the chapter titles, I'm trying to find table of contents in here. Okay, so chapter 1 is toward effectiveness through empathy. So I might ask some questions that are related to building empathy, especially when it's related to different backgrounds and cultures and identities. The second one is counseling encounters in multicultural context and introduction. So that one's a little bit more general. Assessment in persons of cross-cultural counseling. So I know like one of the topics is about how studies and things like that have been normed, the diagnoses have been normed on typically like cis het white males. And so that could be a potential question, you know, about the fact that some of the theories, techniques, diagnoses, and stuff like that that we're going to be working with don't necessarily fit all different kinds of identities and cultures. What are some of the other chapters? 6. So we did the specific context. So we did Asian American clients, clients of Black African ancestry, Arab and Muslim clients, gender, sexism, and privilege, and counseling the marginalized. So again, there may be questions specifically about those groups, like, you know, different ways that, you know, counseling could be more effective for those groups, or ways that counseling is not, you know, typical traditional types of theories and stuff might not work, and how we might have to change things, or, you know, kind of talk to the, or not talk to the clients, but ask them questions, listen to them so that we get a better idea of working with them. And then chapter 17. And then that's the context of poverty. So again, you know, clients who kind of come from lower SES backgrounds, you know, different counseling techniques that may be more or less effective for them. I feel like one big important thing is that none of the exam questions that I selected are ones that are designed to trick you. So I'm not gonna, you know, choose questions that are really ambiguous, or really, you know, where it could be like, well, it could technically be 2 of these answers, which one's like the best fit. I try to pick questions that just, you know, will be able to demonstrate your understanding of the topic and not necessarily be tricky. However, with that said, Canvas does give me the ability to look at test statistics after the exam is completed. And so I am able to look and see if there's sort of a bad question. So if there's a question on the exam that the majority of the students who had that question did not do well on, then it would be a question I would throw out. Or if after the exam you're like, you know, this question I'm really not sure of. It told me that I got it wrong, but I'm not sure why. Go ahead and message me that. I take all of those things into account. And if a question really was a tricky question, or you know, somehow I ended up adding it, even though it was something that, you know, maybe 2 answers were really strongly possible, things like that, I will consider, you know, taking them out if overall it was an issue. And so just make me aware of the question. And again, after the exam, I'll look at the exam statistics and look at the questions and see if anything needs to be, you know, adjusted or anything like that. So try not to worry too much about those kind of questions if they come up. What else? What other questions do you guys have?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just don't know how these things work. I just wanted to ask, so with the study guide, all the questions, and I'm sorry if you said this at the beginning, for all the chapters, are the questions going to be pulled from those?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so all of the questions that are in the exam come from those study guides.
Okay.
So none of the questions will be outside of that. And I do that for a really specific reason. Those questions come from the publisher. And so I figure if they're the ones who created and wrote and put together this textbook, they're going to create questions that really look at the major themes that they're trying to get across. In addition, they're sort of designed to be questions that that are good questions, like as far as being exam questions, like again, not being too tricky and you know, not being, you know, really ambiguous as far as what the answer is. And so I like to take questions directly from the publisher for that reason, because if I was to come up with the questions myself, I don't have specific training in creating exam questions. And so I figure the publisher is going to do a much better job of that than me. And so, but like I said, I also understand that sometimes mistakes can happen or sometimes bad questions can be written. And so I take a look at test statistics at the end, just as, you know, like an automatic thing that I always do, just to make sure there weren't any questions that were just really bad questions.
Thank you.
Yep. And if anybody has questions in general about the course or about the material or assignments or discussions or anything, you can feel free to ask that now as well. Again, you can unmute yourself and ask it out loud, or you can type it in the chat box and I'll see it. Yes, the final will be similar to the midterm. I actually completed the final at the same time that I did the midterm, so the questions are already in there. It's the same thing. I'll give you all of the study guides. All of the questions will come from the study guides. It'll be a 2-hour block. Without looking at it, I can't say exactly how many questions are true, false, multiple choice versus short answer, but it's probably about similar if I'm remembering correctly. And it'll be all the ones from our main textbook and not necessarily from the supplemental material. That doesn't mean that the supplemental material is any less important, because it's definitely information that we need to know. It's just, again, it makes me feel more confident in these exam questions that come directly from the publisher versus me kind of making them up on my own, and risking them being sort of bad exam questions.
I know this is probably in an email, but it becomes available the week after spring break for a few days. Is that right?
Yeah, so I actually have it open the whole week. If we ended up doing this Zoom meeting that Monday, I was going to open it from Tuesday to the end of the week, but because we're doing the Zoom meeting today, I'm going to have it open all week. So it'll be open, it's set to be open March 2nd through March 9th. So you can choose to take it anytime during that week that you'd like, but it does need to be taken in one sitting. So when you sit down to start the exam, you have to finish it in that 2-hour time frame. It won't give you another like opportunity to go in. The other thing is, and I kind of went over this in the beginning, so to repeat for those of you who were here then, but my expectation is that you wouldn't use any peer help, online help, or textbook help through the exam. I'm giving you the study guides, and so it really would be unfair for me to say like, oh yeah, just go ahead and use your textbooks and each other and stuff like that. You know, I really want to make sure that you yourself know the information. And so with that said, because I have the exam open for the full week, if you take it towards the beginning of the week, I just ask like on the honor system that you don't share with your peers what the questions were, or you know, if there were specific questions that you may have gotten right or wrong, kind of giving them that feedback or those answers, especially because those 40 multiple choice true false questions are not going to be the same for everyone. So you may be giving your peer poor information anyway, but just kind of go by the honor system that you're going to be taking this exam as if it was an in-class exam. So doing it on your own without the assistance of outside materials. Is there a chapter where you would like to focus on more? Not really. I tried to pick pretty pretty equally from all of the chapters. So there's a number of questions from each. I think that what complicates it though is because the multiple choice true false questions are selected at random, one student may theoretically get more questions from one of the chapters than another. But I tried to make it pretty even. The definition questions come from mostly some of the earlier chapters because it's defining basic concepts. Like I said, it could be like define the word culture or empathy or privilege or marginalization or, you know, something like that. So those are from some of the earlier chapters, and so you want to have a good understanding of those. And thank you for the compliment on the coffee cup. It was a Christmas present for my kids. Nightmare Before Christmas. And it changes color. So my it's actually tea in there. My tea's getting a little cold because it's starting to turn purple again. The exam is due on 3/9 by 11:59, correct? So, you know, at the very latest, you would want to start your exam before 10 o'clock on 3/9. That would give you like the full 2 hours. So you definitely don't want to start it too late and then end up running out of time. If you do run out of time for the exam, what it does is it automatically submits it for you. So whatever you've answered will still count. You just may not have the opportunity to finish the exam. But I feel like you can pretty easily do this in 2 hours. I mean, again, the true false questions, there's only 40 of them, or true false multiple choice, there's only 40. And even though the short answer questions are labeled essay questions, again, I mean, I'm looking for 1 to 3 sentences. You don't have to do any, you know, more in-depth writing than that. I'm not looking for you to give specific examples of them, just simply define the terms. The only exception is the one short answer question asks you to identify one way in which counselors do this and then kind of back that up. So that one might be a little bit closer to like the maybe 3 to 5 sentence mark, but definitely do not go over that. That would be, you know, way more work than I'm asking you to do. Okay, any more questions? All right. So as I had said, some of you had messaged me. So I guess not everybody knows this, but I did record this session so that it will be available. After I'm done, it has to like download to my computer and things like that. And then I'm going to upload it into an announcement so everyone has access to this, even the people that weren't able to attend today. But then also you will have access to it in case you're like, oh, wait, I asked that question and don't remember the response to it. You can always come back and replay this to help you out. And if you have any questions between now and then, before the exam starts, you can feel free to message as well. I just really want to be mindful of spring break. You know, this is designed as an opportunity for you all to get some rest and relaxation. And I know that that doesn't often happen when you're in school, that usually it's a time for catch up and studying and like, you know, figuring all that kind of stuff out, or maybe even cleaning because that has fallen by the wayside during the semester. But I really want you to take some time this week to rest and relax. So try not to stress too much about this exam. I feel like based on your discussion questions and your responses to each other so far in the course, I feel like all of you are, you know, pretty much understand the concepts we've been going over so far. So I'm really not worried about anybody doing too bad in the exam. Again, if you have questions, I'm here, but I'm hoping that I don't hear from any of you over the next week, because it means that you will be relaxing and taking a nice break and all of that stuff. But I will still be working, because I have my private practice and some other classes that I teach adjunct that have a different spring break than you guys. And so next week is still a work week for me. So do not feel bad about emailing me or texting me or anything, if you have any questions or anything like that, before we get back into classes the beginning of March, and work on this exam. The other question that I've been getting a lot recently, which has nothing to do with the exam, but this week's assignments, the discussion question, I left it open till the end of spring break. And I just did that in case somebody felt like this week was like a crunch week for them and they really needed some extra time. So I know a lot of people did post their initial post yesterday. I did put out an announcement to remind you guys to do that. But if you didn't do your initial one by yesterday, there still is time, and there's still time to do the responses. So again, I prefer that you not work over spring break, but if you feel like you really need it, take the extra time to complete that. And so that was kind of the method behind my madness, was just to give you a little bit of extra time in case you needed it. Because I know this week could have been filled with like exams and projects due and papers and stuff for you all. So I didn't want to overload you. So if nobody else has any other questions, we can end this Zoom meeting. And it was nice to talk to a few of you, face to face or in real time. And just let me know if you have any questions or anything moving forward. Okay.
Thank
Good
you.
luck, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right. Have a good week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.